It's the weekly 30-30 list on the ASX. We're looking at the top 30 momentum companies over the last quarter and the top 30 launchpad companies, those that have had the best improvement over the last week. Gary Glover has been through the list to pull out his favourite trading shares for the week. Good morning, Gary. How are you?
Yeah, no, pretty good, Chris. Yeah.
You've got the list. You've been through it. You've got momentum companies. You've got launchpad companies. Are you seeing any key themes or overarching aspects coming out of the list, or we're just going to jump into finding some trading shares?
Yeah, no real key themes there. Sort of a bit, a bit all over the shop there. I thought there was actually some pretty good setups in the quarterly stuff. There wasn't a ton of sort of short-term triggers. There's a couple in there which are pretty interesting patterns, but most of the more interesting charts are actually in the quarterly ones there. So number one here was SLA, which is Silk Laser. So this is interesting here because it's obviously had a little pop here. Still in a downtrend, hasn't broken a swing high yet. So that's still not so good. But we have sort of popped up here. This one bar here was a little bit heavy on the selling here, but since then it's all dried up, which is quite good. So we've got a nice little tight little flag in there, and that's sort of constructive there. So yeah, although it's still a pretty nasty downtrend, that's a constructive little consolidation there. So apart from that one bar was selling, that's been the only time I've sort of seen any selling there. So I thought number one looked pretty good. MGT, which was number three. This has sort of come back a little deeper there, come back to the 50-day moving average after having that little impulsive move and sort of starting to build here. It's a little small, but not the worst chart there. AVH. Yeah, well, look how strong that is in there. So I think it's been the list for a couple of weeks here now, but we saw a little cup and handle in here, Chris, a little around this section there. You almost sort of, I'm not sure if we call this a cup and handle in here, but we sort of still get a pullback here, a little consolidation, and then just pop through again, So that's the sort of, with these leaders, they're obviously looking for a pattern like this, which that is a good sort of cup and handle in there, nice and little tight. And then a pop through, and then you're breaking through the old high, little B wave, and then you're basically breaking through the old high as well. So that's some really good signals in there and some follow through. But when they start running, you're looking for a little pause here, like a little ABC, a little sideways pause in here. So we've definitely got sort of something in here, and then just sort of pop through again. So it's just a good lesson here of sort of what can happen with these sort of stocks. So doesn't obviously we know this doesn't happen to all of them or heaps of them. Capture those sort of bigger moves there. So that's the sort of setup we're sort of looking for, these leaders there. So just sort of interesting chart to sort of keep an eye on there. The Weebit Nano, it's sort of interesting there. It's obviously the only thing concerning me a little bit now, Chris, is with the last sort of corrections there was a couple of bit of selling there on those sort of 2 days down. And it's probably the largest correction so far of the move. So that's just probably get us a little bit, if I was long some of those, I would be sort of starting to sort of tighten up a little bit here. Me personally probably would do a little bit of trimming as well, but that's just looking, starting to sort of see a few signs of distribution coming in. Can still push higher, as we know. But yeah, just looking a bit long there, just starting to show some signs of weakness there. MDX is obviously a new company there. Had a bit of a pop there. So I think it's a gold and iron ore play. But yeah, just a new IPO. So it's always hard to trade IPOs off the bat here, and not much price action now. I'd probably be waiting to sort of see a little bit more price action there. I thought this one looked pretty interesting here, actually. OM1, nice little nice little pop through here, some pretty decent volume. So this is our sort of strong bar. So strong sort of day up here. Got a bit of selling the next day, which we do see all the time after you've had a move like that. But what's important is to sort of see if any volume follows. And what we sort of saw there is that there was no more selling came in. It was sort of, apart from that sort of 1 day, the selling really lightened up here. So we've sort of popped up again. We saw some okay volume again, and then pulled back a couple of days under the high and consolidated. So this is looking pretty constructive. I know it's pretty small, but the price action is pretty encouraging. So I thought that also looked pretty good. PS3, just Mineral Resources out of Zimbabwe. That was one thing I did see actually on the list, was that a lot of these miners out of Africa were starting to pop here. So, you know, some of the riskier stocks, maybe, I don't know, or maybe Africa's finally getting safer. I don't know, I'm not sure about that, but definitely saw a few sort of smaller players and some African players starting to pop here. So, yeah, I think sort of NHE was another one there, which is a sort of helium play in Tanzania. Just because we've sort of had this flat sort of structure there, and now we're sort of just seeing a bit of volume starting to pop here. So just interesting. But yeah, they're pretty small, some of those. C1X, just had this one down to sort of to watch here, just because we've had a pretty strong move, had a bit of a pullback, had another bounce here, and now we're just waiting for another little congestion there. So maybe this will tighten up here, some, you know, maybe some big VCP, but just goes on our watch list to sort of see if we can sort of go sideways for a bit there. SRN I thought was interesting, just not only the code, but yeah, just a little pop there on the stock. Some okay volume for a small one there. DUR, I thought this one's getting a bit top heavy, a bit risky here. Just starting to see a little bit of volume sort of coming in at the later stages here. Still a pretty strong trend. PGH was, yeah, just sort of some okay volume down there. Had a nice little false break of the low, which I always like. Don't know if you sort of call this a little cup and handles in there, but just sort of popped up there, stayed pretty tight, and then went through. There's a little sort of, you know, I like to sort of see a B wave break, you know, as at least a sort of first positive sign there. Interesting just to sort of see what this does on the retreat side here. So sometimes we're sort of, you know, you better feel for stocks how they not just how they go up, is actually how they come down. So they pull back and we don't sort of, you know, if it's corrective and not much volume and it sort of, you know, trades in a sideways manner, then that's good. If it come back impulsively and strong volume, then that's not so good. So sometimes there's a bit more knowledge sort of picked up about the stock, how it trades sort of in a counter move rather than just the on the upside here. Thought this one is pretty good as well. This is one that we've been on the list for a couple of weeks here now, BAS. I think we've sort of commented on this one that we've seen pretty good volume on the way up. Pretty light volume on the consolidation. We saw some decent volume coming again, pretty light volume, so no real selling coming in here. So and a little bit of a pop here, but again, no selling here yet. So as much as the stock's looking a little elevated, no one's everyone's hanging on. So that's always a good sign there when you sort of see those strong stocks really don't have too much selling there. So OBM was on the list, looks okay. HLI was just sort of, yeah, it's hard to sort of look at these ones here. I think you're just sort of waiting for this to sort of go sideways for a bit. So that was the sort of 30, that was the sort of 30 quarterlies there. Yeah, I thought there was some interesting sort of stocks in there. Couple in play at the moment, couple to sort of set up. Number one on the weekly list was, yeah, just our new IPO. Pretty hard to track there. Wasn't too much in the top tier there. The AKP I thought was interesting just because of the volume there, Chris, as well. Just definitely seeing some big volume here. So we have been in a pretty nasty downtrend. I think if we're not mistaken, we've just maybe broken maybe a swing high on the way down here. So that's one good aspect. I just thought this is pretty interesting sort of volume here. And that AKP, that's Audio Pixels, which has pretty much been out of the spotlight here for the last year. That was a really sort of kind of momentum stock there a couple of years ago, but has gone quiet here. So thought that's interesting one. What do we got there? the one that actually was pretty interesting here was actually the old Mesoblast. So we've got our sort of low here, Chris. Sort of first high low, second high low, third high low. So we've kind of got our 0, 1, 2, 3 pattern building here, but some okay volume in there as well. Just seeing some okay volume sort of running out, cooling off here. So if you look at this on the weekly, longer term sort of time frames there, although it's a bit of a flat structure here so far, the positive aspect is that we are sort of pulling back, just making higher low, higher low, higher low. So it is sort of building here. Just the last couple of legs up here, we've started to see a little bit of volume come in here. So I see like I had one of their main products there sort of was semi-FDA approved, really sort of been fast tracked there. That looks sort of promising for one of their sort of one of the commercial sort of drugs there. So but yeah, I mean, Mesoblast is, they spend a lot of money. They planted a lot of sort of patents on a lot of different drugs there. So rather than sort of try and focus on one or two, they've just spent a ton of money sort of try to plant as many sort of flags and different areas as they can here. So whether that strategy pays off down the long term or not, but just definitely one to keep an eye on here. It's just, let's say that's a interesting sort of pattern there, sort of how the base is built here. There's some look at that volume yesterday off that low, on that good news. That's kind of constructive to me. So that is definitely one to sort of keep an eye on. GPR was the next one there. I thought was interesting, only because of the volumes again, just volumes over the last couple of weeks. I mean, I know it's a 2-cent stock, which is difficult. I think it's a gold play in PNG, which makes it even more difficult. But there's some decent price action sort of going on there. Some decent volume as well. Did see Liontown there recently, sort of, I know, pulled back there. I think it sort of just stayed above the previous swing low there. And it did a bit of consolidation around here, and then sort of kick out of here. So has popped up here, but I'm just not sure about this one here longer term. So yeah, it has moved up to a bit of a level. I think there might be a bit of resistance there, but not too bad. VR1, I thought this was interesting just because there's some decent volume. Again at the low, again a little small. This is sort of typical of a lot of stocks that are on display here at the moment. A lot of them quite small. One that I thought looked pretty interesting here was Nanosonics NAN. So I mean, this is sort of, this is a kind of VCP pattern here, Chris, in a way. So each correction is sort of getting tighter and tighter. Did go to a new high there, so look at a little false break here. But it's pretty much held pretty tight in here. Hasn't really sort of sold off there. Look at the last thing on the chart here, the last few days. Wow, some big volume.
Big volume,
Big volume buying that. So it sort of stayed pretty tight in that. So if you look at the weekly setup there, probably looks a little bit more impressive there. This is sort of almost our ascending triangle. This is sort of the top of your triangle there, and then it's got sort of ascending nature here. But we are seeing, off that low, we saw pretty steady volume up to the high. We saw a couple of weeks of sort of selling, and then it sort of did sort of dry up here. So a little bit of volume coming at low, a little bit of volume up here. Did see the one week of selling in there. Other than that, very little selling there. Good volume again into that last peak, and then been a bit choppy there. So a little choppy. It looked like it was going to sell off here into that low there, but that sort of ended up being that sort of ended up seeing stopping volume. There was a stock that we covered on it might have been Mars, actually. MGH did sort of something similar. Looked like it was sort of going to follow through that selling, but it didn't. It just sort of stopped. So can be like exhaustive when you sort of see, you can see days down like that, just nice and tight here. So, that's sort of, there's a battle going on there. And then, we see who wins the next day. So just really, really strong price action there. So the fact that this is sort of, just getting higher, shallower and shallower and shallower as well. That's just, high, low, high, low, high, low. That's very, very constructive there. So I think Nanosonics looks pretty interesting here. So I saw Wilson's actually upgraded it to 11.25 price target there. Just think the FDA. I think there's a big FDA approval pending, and it made mention of it. They should get notified around the 12th of March. So a few brokers think they'll get this over the line. But yeah, it's like, well, are the traders jumping the gun here? Are they jumping early, or does someone know something here? But price action is definitely pretty encouraging there. Next on the list was NEU, which was that was one that was on the list for quite a while there, Chris. Had a bit of a consolidation there. Last thing it sort of did up here was had a bit of a pullback there, which is a bit of an overbalance, probably slightly, largest correction on the move. Then went to a new high, it's like in there, and then swung back down to a new low. So in terms of Elliott wave terms there, that's like what they call an expanded flat. So basically, you expand to a new high, a new low, and then you go on again. So this is a fair sort of correction here now. I thought this might have come off a bit deeper, but it's just gone marginally higher, marginally lower on the expansion. And there's been good volume here, gone straight back in here again. So this is kind of constructive as well. It's probably a little bit more riskier, but I'll say there's nothing too negative in there so far. So yeah, that's pretty interesting as well. Only one of the other ones I saw that were pretty hot there, I think FPH has been on a pretty strong run, been sort of tightening up here. And thought MP1 was sort of one to keep an eye on here, Chris, as well. That's it's been in the doldrums here, but did go down and retest the low. If it can sort of hold this old low here and reverse, there might be a bit of a false break there. That volume can be sort of exhaustive. So I haven't done anything with this at all, but I just thought, it's just interesting. It's gone back to a new low here. Maybe it could be a false break here. So, but I think it's important to sort of be looking at those stocks that are that are trading, in this sort of sideways. I think there's, maybe mention this stock here. This HLI, I know it's sort of gapped up here, but what it does this is one thing that we should be looking for, is that, if a stock's had an impulsive move up and then it's largely gone sideways. So look at that, all this moving here, it's just gone sideways for a period of time. So just means it's just having a breather, having a bit of a pause. So last thing on the chart here, you can see there, it's had a couple of tests of that low, went and did a marginal new low, and then some volume started to come in there. So it's a good idea to be looking for these stocks that are in these sort of sideways sort of patterns there after a bit of a run, because normally they sort of break out in the upward direction. So looking for stocks that have had a bit of a pause and are struggling to go down. They generally sort of pop up here. I mean, just I think Zero has just done sort of something in the last few days here. I mean, that sort of started to build here some okay volume, but pull back here. But that whole thing just sort of sat on top of the previous sort of high there.
So less impulsive, more of a correction in time.
Yeah, it's just a correction in time here. So you sort of want to see it go up quickly, and then it's okay. This is a messy. It took a long time here, but it's not really going down here. I think there might have been one day there, might have been this day here where I was thinking, maybe something's going on here. But it was an inside day the next day, and then the next day we're popping up on volume. So at this stage I thought, hold on, that doesn't want to go down. So that's the type of thing, sort of sometimes you see on the smaller stocks, they can go sideways for a long period of time, but the bigger ones will just have a bit of a pause here. But we want to see stocks that are sort of going up. There's our 50-day moving average, which is classic sort of stuff. Come back, retest the 50, come back in a little three-wave manner, go sideways, and then start to go here. So this is what we're going to look on. It's pretty tricky out there. It's very, very choppy. It's hard to sort of get some traction. I feel like I'm sort of going, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, and then 1 step forward, and then 1.5 steps back, and then maybe go 3 steps forward, 1.5 steps back. It's really, really, really hard work, this market here. So got to stay disciplined. This is a period there where I'm finding at the moment, some of the best traders in the world are struggling at the moment. So they're not making much gains, but they're keeping it light too. So keeping everything tight, not trading too much, just waiting for, they sort of keep waiting for these setups to sort of, hopefully keep going here. But yeah, it is pretty choppy out there, so it's not easy currently. Probably what's more important is to sort of protect your capital a little bit. But yeah, we're just looking for sort of, you kind of want to see those sort of, keep looking for those sort of consolidations that sort of, things that are struggling to go down. Because they normally sort of pop up there. And just got to be careful to follow stuff too. It's not really a market to be sort of buying the breakout to so much at the moment. So I know sort of normally like the cup and handles and some of those rectangles and stuff there, they normally sort of you can normally sort of buy in the break. It's sort of it's a tough ask at the moment to that sort of strategy. It's sort of better off looking for your little pauses there, false breaks or and then sort of following those moves sort of early. So. But yeah, hopefully things will turn around the corner here and get a little bit easier. But for the time being here, just make sure we're protecting the capital. Probably trade a little bit lightly. I've been sort of trying to build up here, but so we had a couple of big winners, but I've had probably more sort of lots of small losers there. So, but yeah, that's what you got to do in these sort of choppy times.
Really good insights to take into the week ahead for next week. And really a good lesson to unpack how to look at those charts, especially those corrections in time, because as you pointed out a fair few times before, you can then see those bases built and then become the foundation for the next leg up. So will that be what you're working through when you're looking into surfacing new companies? Is, are they building a base? Are they ready to go into a next phase of a run?
Yeah, so at the moment, obviously we've sort of had confession season with a lot of companies reporting, so we're sort of starting to see which ones are doing well, which ones aren't. So there's some sort of help on the fundamental aspect, and then we're looking sort of technically for those sort of stocks that they've sort of been building, they're struggling to go down. Maybe they've had a fairly decent result or report, which is sort of constructive, and then we're just looking for sort of try and buy those into sort of any little pullbacks or any little consolidations. But we're just got to keep looking for those little, because the beauty there, I mean, even like number one stock there, SLA, is that it's a market that we're going to lose quite a bit, as in because it's so choppy at the moment. So it's important if you're going to lose, you lose small. So you're looking for sort of things that maybe sort of tighten up here, consolidation. So you're looking for try and get positions sort of pretty close to a really important swing low, and then you're not risking too much. And if you get the pop and it runs, then you get a big gain. So it is a market where you're probably getting chopped up a bit. So you either got to basically, get a bet a little smaller, or you get a bet a little tighter on you. I know sort of Minervini will often sort of bring his sort of stop loss is in percentage wise a little narrower, and then look for probably a narrow gains as well. So instead of sort of going for like a 7 or 8 sort of percent stop and then trying to get say 23, 24% gains, he might bring it into say maybe 4 or 5% and maybe 12 to 15% gains. They're just sort of trying to in that regard. So yeah, you got to adapt a little bit, but yeah, it feels like it's a hard working market here. But yeah, I still think it's sort of going to be constructive here. I like what the market's doing here. It's sort of not so good news the other day, pretty red. It was kind of a day for me where I sort of pretty much saw everything was down in my portfolio, but I didn't get stopped out of one single position, not even any partials or anything. And that's sort of just telling you, and that's pretty rare. I don't think in the last 2 years, if I had everything down in my portfolio red on the day, I would have got stopped out of at least one of those positions, maybe 1.5, something, So I got stopped out absolutely nothing recently here, but just not moving, just sort of insisting in its consolidation. So, but yeah, it's just really, really choppy. So it's just you just got to keep it tight. Understand your risk every day. At some stage here things will turn. You'll get a few big winners. I've had a big winner today in that zero. Sort of something that I sort of built up. Did sort of scale up my position now. Got a little bit shaky there about a week ago, but again, you got to have your stops and your targets in there for a reason. So today it's had a bit of a pop. I've traded out some partial there. I'm still going to retain some there, but it's just a market there where I think you've got to take some off the top here. If you have a big sort of if you get a 10% sort of move in the stock there, unfortunately, just the market is so choppy here. It's not following through. It's like like a really sort of buoyant sort of bullish period. So like if that sort of zero had sort of happened a year ago, I wouldn't have sold any of it.
Probably have more legs in the run.
I probably just sort of held on to it, think yeah. But I just know the market's sort of just so choppy. It'll gap up here, like here, gap up here, then it'll we'll chop around for a few days and then maybe go again. So it's a grinding market. It's really quite difficult. It's probably one of the more difficult markets I've seen for a couple of years. So just got to stick to your method. Sometimes in these periods, it can be about not losing so much money. So I had a first half of this financial year up to December, probably had my best 6 months of my life trading. But the last sort of 2.5 months here, it's been difficult. It's been hard to sort of get any traction at all. So it's been very choppy here. So, but the key there is just not to give up too much of your capital in that choppy period. So keep everything tight. So if you are going to go through a bit of a losing sequence there, or going to be a difficult sequence, the main thing there is that hopefully you'll still get a couple of big winners, just a lot less big winners, and then you'll get chopped up and have lots of small losers and stuff there. But if you can kind of retain 97% of your capital through the really hard markets there, not give too much away, that's imperative, because then when the cycle turns, and then bang, you're on again, and then it changes. So that's what we're trying to do. So just it's all about managing the risk here when it's not on.
Well, that's probably a good point to point to the watch list that we'll put up on the right hand side to say that's how you're managing the portfolio. You're doing that in the Tuesday reports. You're running through the positions that are on your watch list, what you're looking for, why you're looking for these certain aspects. And I'll also put in there the trading strategies that you're using. You're talking about false breaks and springs, VCPs. They're all on the right-hand side of the trading watch list as well. That also goes into some drilling down of some analytics that you've done in previous interviews. And we'll put your Twitter handle over on the left-hand side for those who want to follow you there, because you can be pretty good with your economic output or analysis, charts, and commentary. So to that end, we'll probably say thank you very much, Gary Glover from Novus Capital.
Thanks, Chris.